Black Dread is perhaps the most bamf dragon in the entire World of Ice and Fire series. So this video, I want to talk about 10 facts about my favorite dragon, Balerion, that you may not know. So here's a little refresher about Balerion just in case you're rusty on your dragon history. Balerion, called the Black Dread, was a dragon of House Targaryen. Balerion was one of 5 dragons that were brought to Dragonstone when the Targaryens left, or fled depending on which story you subscribe to, Valyria. He would be the only one of the 5 dragons brought to Dragonstone to survive to Aegon the Conqueror's time. And as you probably remember, Aegon used Balerion to conquer much of Westeros and to kill a lot of people in the Seven Kingdoms. After Aegon's death, few Targaryens would claim Balerion as their own, and some that tried would not enjoy their results. So with that little bit of background information out of the way, let's talk about 10 facts about Balerion the Black Dread, because I just love this dragon. Okay, let's start with a god. Balerion was named after an ancient god of the Valyrian Freehold. And not that I know very many gods, but Balerion lived up to being named after one. He was the largest of all the Targaryen dragons, with a fearsome appetite, flames that could melt steel and stone, a wingspan so vast that entire towns would fall under his shadow when he passed overhead, jaws so big he could swallow a mammoth or aurochs whole, and had teeth as long as swords. His breath was so hot he could turn areas of sand into glass. So, yeah, he lived up to being named after a god. Unless it turns out the god he was named after was actually weak or a pussy or something, then he was better than that god. Oh, and how cool is this? His flames were so hot, they were black. Really cool. That's the answer. Let's move on to number 2, the last living creature. So like I said, Balerion was one of 5 dragons taken by the Targaryens from Valyria to Dragonstone. Less than a century after this move, the doom of Valyria would occur, destroying all the other dragon rider families and the Valyrian Freehold, minus the Targaryens who had left, and 1 or 2 dragon riders who ended up dying anyway, so they don't really matter. This means that Balerion was likely the last living creature in all the world who had seen Valyria in all its glory at the dragon's death at well over 200 years old. Which may be why he returned to Valyria at one point in his life, but I'll get to that later. Let's go to number 3, not many could claim him. Balerion never stopped growing, and by the time of Aegon's conquest, he was already pretty big. As the years went on, the Black Dread got bigger, fiercer, and more willful. This resulted in only 3 men claiming the dragon: Aegon the Conqueror, his son Maegor the Cruel, and then Viserys I, who actually only had him for less than a year before the dragon died of old age. Now, even for those 3 men, controlling Balerion may have been hard. It's said that Aegon flew on the Black Dread when he had to travel quickly over land and sea or for battle, and not for much else. So maybe it was taxing even for an experienced dragon rider. And if you didn't have any experience, you didn't even want to attempt anything with Balerion. Trying to claim a dragon isn't an easy task. Trying to claim a dragon as old, fierce, and willful as Balerion? Suicide mission. There would be Targaryens that would try to tame Balerion and fail horribly. In fact, one of the wisest Targaryen kings said, Balerion wasn't a dragon to be trifled with. Which actually brings us to one of those failed attempts. So let's talk about number 4, he fucked a Targaryen princess. Metaphorically, not literally. Back during the reign of Jaehaerys I Targaryen, his older sister, Rhaenys' daughter, Princess Arya, made a terrible decision. Just after her 13th birthday, she left her mother's castle, Dragonstone, after having many conflicts with her, and decided to mount Balerion. Princess Arya had never ridden a dragon before, and choosing a dragon as old, willful, and powerful as him instead of the younger dragons was a terrible idea. Though there are some guesses why she did it. Maybe she wanted a dragon bigger than her mother's, or wanted to tame the dragon that had killed her father and his own dragon years before. Whatever reason she had, she did it. and regretted it. Because as I mentioned, by this time the Black Dread was the most powerful and largest dragon. You just didn't mount him and assume that you were going to be able to control him. And wherever Princess Arya wanted to go, some believe King's Landing, once she got on Balerion, he went, nope. Instead, it's believed he took her to the ruins of Valeria, a place he had once called home. We're told that he most likely took the poor child there while she clung to his back, unable to have the force of will or knowledge to stop him. But there's a reason Valeria is avoided, and sailors steer clear of it. The Valerians had practiced dark arts, blood magic, and experimented with the flesh of beasts and men to make monsters. The area, now after the Doom, was considered a place of death. We don't know what Balerion and the princess encountered there, but when Balerion brought her back to King's Landing over a year later, she was clothed in rags and sickly thin, sliding from his back and collapsing to the ground. When a knight picked her up to carry her, he could feel her fever through his armor, and she twisted and shuddered in his arms like there was something inside her. The princess died begging for death as she was cooked from within, her flesh growing darker and darker until it cracked and her eyes cooked within her skull until they burst. She finally died from the shock of being immersed in ice. And that's when the snakes with hands and the worms with faces burst from her flesh. So wherever in Valeria the Black Dread had taken her and whatever they encountered, he had signed her death warrant. A painful, terrible death warrant. Balerion didn't escape unscathed, though. According to Septim Barth, Balerion had wounds as well. That enormous beast, the Black Dread, the most fearsome dragon ever to soar through the skies of Westeros, returned to King's Landing with half-healed scars that no man recalled ever having seen before, and a jagged rent down his left side almost 9 feet long, a gaping red wound from which his blood still dripped, hot and smoking. So whatever was there put him through the ringer as well. Balerion. That is terrifying. Number 5. Dragon Pit. After what happened to Princess Arya, King Jaehaerys I made sure this would never happen again. Shortly after, Balerion was the first dragon to be housed in the Dragon Pit, and under Jaehaerys' command, he and other dragons were to be guarded night and day. This led to Jaehaerys creating a new order of guards, the Dragon Keepers. With 77 men in their ranks, they wore suits of gleaming black armor and helms crested by a row of dragon scales that continued diminishing down their backs. The guards not only took precautions to make sure they were watching the dragons at all times, but also from time to time they dissuaded a Targaryen child from even attempting to claim the Black Dread, especially as Balerion got older and slower. Okay, let's move on to number 6. He had the patience of a god. Balerion, as you probably have gotten the hint of by this point in the video, or maybe you knew before, was a bamf. You didn't mess with Balerion, and few could tame him. But that didn't mean he was a straight-up monster. I mean, ignore the princess thing. Story goes that King Jaehaerys I's small son Balon, upon his first time entering the dragon pit to see the dragons, went right up to Balerion and hit him on the snout. It's reported a knight remarked, "He's either brave or mad. That one." Knowing the Targaryens, probably a little of column A and column B. Afterwards, the kid would be known as Balon the Brave for slapping the shit out of the Black Dread. So just so you get this right, a huge, powerful dragon was hit on the snout by a little Targaryen brat, and he didn't totally waste that kid. That's impressive, Balerion. A kid gives me attitude and I'm ready to punt them. And I know everyone was high-fiving the kid for animal abuse, but instead of naming the little prince Balon the Brave, they should have named Balerion the Black Dread. The super fucking patient, because I could have ended your fucking life, kid, like it was nothing, and I would have lost 0 sleep over it. Hey, let's move on to number 7. He helped make the Iron Throne. Not only was Balerion responsible for killing thousands during Aegon's conquests, including helping making some houses extinct, at the end of the war, it was Balerion who helped forge the Iron Throne by melting the swords Aegon had collected from his fallen enemies. But let's go back to killing, because Balerion murdered a shit ton of people. Not only was Balerion used by Aegon before his conquest to burn a Volantis fleet in Essos at the request of some free cities, and during his conquest to burn many people alive, Balerion was also used to burn every castle in Dorne multiple times. And at Hellholt, his fiery breath was so hot it turned the sands around the castle into glass. Interestingly, Balerion also saw peace and flew Aegon to Sunspear 10 years after the Dornish War had ended to celebrate peace. Well, I'm sure the dragon didn't celebrate the peace, but at least he got to see it. Nice break from killing. Probably. Maybe he liked killing, I don't know. Balerion would then have many years of going on progresses with King Aegon, with Aegon using the sight of his dragon to make sure no rebellions broke out, which honestly, at the sight of Balerion, I wouldn't want to rebel either. Unfortunately, or fortunately if Balerion liked killing, when Aegon's son Maegor through his sister wife Visenya claimed the Black Dread after Aegon's death, he was used for more atrocities. Maegor used the dragon to end rebellions, to spend time in Essos during the Targaryen prince's exile, which maybe it was a nice vacation for Balerion, I don't know. And after Maegor stole the throne from his nephews, he used Balerion to murder hundreds and hundreds of Faith militant, burn castles, reducing some to ashes, and kill Maegor's nephew and his dragon. Though to be fair, because the Black Dread was so terrifying, sometimes Maegor would just take him somewhere to make people stop rebelling or fear rebelling further. Imagine being so awesome. Imagine being so terrifying that at the sight of you, people go, oh, no, I'm done. I'll do whatever the fuck you want. But then imagine the downsides, because number 9, being blamed for things. Now, Balerion did do plenty of killing and was pretty fierce, but that doesn't mean he wasn't blamed for things that actually weren't his fault. When he disappeared with the Princess Arya, and before his return, King Jaehaerys and others heard rumors of the things Balerion was allegedly doing. Some claimed it was his fires that swept across the disputed lands. Others said he was the dragon in the pit at Astapor, and other stories claimed he was the monster that roamed the disputed lands. Of course, Balerion was probably innocent of these crimes, but when you're a bamf like he is, people tend to make up shit about you. Sadly, we're at number 10, The Last Rider. By 93 AC, Balerion was over 200 years old and had finally stopped growing. However, at this time, he was heavy, sluggish, often sleeping, and hard to awaken. Prince Balon, the one that had smacked him on the snout as a child, had a son named Viserys, who was the last Targaryen to claim Balerion. At 16 years old, the prince claimed the Black Dread, but given the dragon's age, Balerion struggled to get the Targaryen up in the air. Though he finally did, and the Black Dread flew 3 times around King's Landing before landing again. Viserys had wanted to take Balerion to Dragonstone, but he didn't believe the dragon had the strength to do it. Which he was right, and less than a year later, the Black Dread died. His skull would be hung on the wall in the Red Keep's throne room until the usurper Robert Baratheon had it removed and stored in a dank cellar. Which does make me a bit sad because the Black Dread was so amazing. So whether you knew all those Balerion facts or not, thanks for watching, like, subscribe, and which Targaryen dragon is your favorite?